Hello, people from around the universe. I am your host, the Italian Ace. And look at that, I kept my promise and it's not 1 year since the last time I uploaded. Let's go. Regardless, that's not why you're here. You're here to talk about the upcoming Pokemon Legends Z through A. More specifically, what its implications with Mega Evolutions could be for Pokemon as a whole. I do think there is quite a fair bit to discuss today, and so there's no real point in just dilly-dallying around. With that in mind, let's get to the video. But before we do that, cue my intro. Mega Evolution. It was around for a whole 2 generations, which may not sound like a lot, but it is twice as long as every other generational gimmick, so it must have done something right. However, I think we can all agree it was not the most balanced of mechanics, because when you can only bring 1 Mega to your team, not that you should be able to bring more, that would make it worse, but when you can only bring 1 Mega to your team, and there are options like Mega Salamence, Mega Kangaskhan before nerfs, Mega Rayquaza and whatever they were thinking when they made that Pokemon. And then there are options like Mega Beedrill. You're kind of left wondering, why would I ever pick anything other than like the top 5 Mega Evolutions? This is not even to talk about some of the Megas that got arguably worse when they Mega Evolved, like Mega Garchomp. What were they thinking? Who was like, you know what, make Garchomp better? Giving him a worse ability and hear me out, lowering his speed. But his attack is gonna be insane. I don't even like Garchomp, and that is still such a stupid decision. Like, what? Whatever. However, with the recent announcement of Pokemon Z through A, more so its trailer, Mega Evolution is basically confirmed to be coming back into the game. Or they're really baiting us for no reason, which would be super bizarre. And that got me thinking, what does that mean for Pokemon as a whole? Because right now, the generational gimmick is terrestrializing, and while they could coexist, couldn't think of the word for some reason, I was about to say co-survive, which, sure. I don't really know if that's something that we would want for the competitive scene, to be honest. Like, imagine a Mega that also can change typing. I don't know. Could be a little too crazy. Still, there's something about them adding Megas back into Legends Z through A that has got me wondering, are they coming back in like the main series somehow? Because let's think about it. If they are adding Megas back into a main series game, so I guess when I said are they coming back into the main series, the answer is yes, but I meant more so like the standard generational releases. If they are adding Megas back into something like Z through A, what is really stopping them from putting it back into like a Scarlet and Violet type of game? More specifically, they might almost have to, because they're gonna give us new Megas. I am almost positive that that's gonna be the case. And it would just be very bizarre if those forms were only available in one game ever. I mean, it's not unheard of. Technically, Gigantamax is only available in Sword and Shield, but that was also the main Gen 8 game that had a 3-year lifespan, if you will, in terms of its competitive scene, even though the first couple years were the pandemic. But like, you get my point. It would just be very weird if they just kept them restricted to this one game that also doesn't really have competitive Pokemon. Unless they change something, you know, this is basing it off of Legends Arceus. And so, like, just imagine they do release a new Mega for the starters that they pick. Whatever they end up being, which, if you're curious about what they should be, well, should be, you can go look at my last video. But like, let's say that they do add those megas. Are we just never gonna see them in like an actual normal classic, let's say, Pokemon game? It's possible, but it would be kind of bizarre. I mean, heck, let's just think back to Legends Arceus, and let's pretend for a second that for whatever reason, they decided not to add the Hisuian forms to Scarlet and Violet. Wouldn't that be kind of dumb? Like, of course, regional variants and megas are not the same, but imagine one of your favorite Pokemon gets this super cool new form. Like, for example, even though I think they could have done a lot more with him, I still prefer Hisuian Samurott a lot. Like, a lot over regular Samurott. Even though neither is the way I would really take the Oshawott line in terms of their final evolution. But now they're like, oh, actually, you can never use them in just a normal classic Pokemon experience. And for as much as I still think Legends Arceus was the best Pokemon game we've ever gotten, that doesn't mean that I want the Pokemon there to be exclusive to it. But then here's the other kind of flip side to this. Let's say they decide, yes, Mega Evolution is coming back in Generation 10. Maybe just Generation 10, but it's coming back in Generation 10. Would they not do a new generational gimmick? I mean, maybe. Maybe they don't have any ideas right now for a new gimmick, so they're just going to have Megas come back. But then that would open up a whole other set of questions like, well, are we going to see Gigantamax come back? Or Dynamaxing, I should say. Because that's a standard form. Are we going to see Z-moves come back? Is Terastallization going to stick around? You know, like, none of this would be bad per se, but it would completely change the dynamic of these gimmicks as far as we know them, which could be a very good thing. But it would also, you know, be quite the decision for them to make. And while I do think that overall Mega Evolution, one of the more beloved generational gimmicks that they've come up with, if only for the fact that, generally speaking, the Pokemon that get the Megas have the biggest buff compared to any of the generational gimmicks and what buff they can give to any Pokemon realistically. And so that's another way, kind of like regional variants, to breathe new life into a classic Pokemon. Having said that, I don't really know how I personally would feel having Mega Evolutions come back instead of a new gimmick. Because, to be honest, I did really like Megas, and even though they're probably my second favorite gimmick after Z-moves, I was about to say Gen Z, I don't know where my brain is today, but they're my second favorite gimmick after Z-moves. I don't know, like, not that I would be upset to not have a new gimmick, but it would also make me kind of worried, at least a little bit, just like a tiny little bit, that maybe Game Freak is starting to run out of ideas, you know? And for as much as there's all of the jokes of, oh, well, it's the same game every time for Pokemon, they haven't made anything new since, Red, Blue, and Green. Like, no. Come on. If you played Red and Blue or Red and Green or Yellow, and then you played Scarlet and Violet, you cannot tell me that is the same game. Like, yes, there are obviously the same basic concepts, but they are so much more developed and polished and revolutionized in some instances compared to Red, Green, Blue, Yellow, and any game really, up until maybe Gen 5 and beyond, that you cannot tell me that, oh, they're the same one. And even after Gen 5, while a lot of the core competitive rules, or more than rules, I guess, functions and mechanics have stayed consistent, there has still been a lot of innovation in Pokemon. Not just for the gimmick, but like new regional forms, you know? That was a big one in Gen 7. Or introducing different types of legendaries, like the evolving legendaries, or the ones that had a completely different base stat total that then end up the most broken because of their ability. Or just generally the game's progressing. Like you can see it in the graphics, which yes, we all make fun of Pokemon for not having the best graphics, but they do advance nonetheless. And you can see it with the fact that we got a fully open world Pokemon game for the first time. And something like Gens Arceus, which is completely different from anything we had before. My point is, even though, of course, the basic formula remains constant throughout, because it works and people really like it, it is disingenuous to just dismiss all of Pokemon as, well, it's been the same game from 1996 and nothing has changed at all. Like, that's just not true, you know? So, I would just hate if them bringing back Megas or whatever is somehow a sign that they're running out of steam just like a little bit, you know? Not a lot, just a little bit. And also, part of me would be slightly concerned if they decide to have more than one gimmick at a time in a generation. Because we saw what happened with Gen 7, having Z-moves and Megas. That was already not a completely broken meta game, but you know, like quite a difficult one to kind of figure out. But I think if you do it with some of the other mechanics, like imagine Mega Evolutions and Dynamaxing. I don't know. I'm not saying that the game would get like broken just from that, but I don't know. I mean, part of me would be a little concerned, just a little concerned that there would be too much for them to balance, you know, just too much. And the game is not balanced right now, technically, but it is not so broken that competitive just feels like it's dying, you know? And I wouldn't want to see competitive dying because they're trying to do too much at once. Anyway, these are my thoughts about Mega Evolution coming back to the games and what that could potentially mean for Pokemon. Please let me know yours in the comments below, and also maybe drop down some of the Megas you would like to see in the new game, because they're gonna give us new Megas. Like, let's just be honest here, we're getting some new Megas. I hope. Also, let's be honest, there is just one mechanic that Pokemon should really add to the games, no matter what, and that is voice acting. What are we doing, Game Freak? We are almost 30 years into the franchise, and we still don't have voice acting for an RPG game. Are you kidding me? But for now, that is it from me today. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, and also consider subscribing, because it would be fun to have you join along in this journey towards Legends Z through A. I hope to see you all in the next one. And until then, remember to follow the way of the Ace. See ya!